It's funny how sometimes the simplest approaches and techniques can be the most productive at times in bass fishing. You know, everybody around the country has probably heard of a floating worm, and all it is, it's just a little plastic worm, soft plastic worm, on usually a 3/0, sometimes a 2/0, sometimes a 4/0, just a weightless hook right there. And what this bait allows you to do is come through cover very easily. So when the bait hits the water, I'm gonna let it sink just a few seconds and then twitch, and give it a little bit of line between twitches. So you wanna give it a little bit of a tip. You'll twitch and bring your rod back to it. Twitch, bring your rod back to it. And that helps that trick worm really dance and entice some strikes. I'm fishing this right now on 8-pound test fluorocarbon. That sounds really light, but with this rig being weightless, it really allows for some incredible natural action. It gives it a lot of action back and forth, and when the bite gets tough, it's an excellent way to catch them, because you could go out, throw a frog, and you might have some followers or something. They might come up and nip at it. But with this, they tend to engulf it. It's a little bit more subtle. It's not as threatening to them. So when you have after a storm front rolls in and you get high pressure, it's an excellent way to catch them. There you go, that's a nice bass on a floating worm. One of the most popular ways to catch bass all around the country. It's so easy, anybody can do it, and it's a bunch of fun too. That's a pretty one. So basically you have two options when you're choosing the proper rod for a floating worm. Your first option, and probably the most popular option, is going to be a spinning rod. A spinning rod allows you, they're usually they've got a little bit softer tip, and you can fire that bait and skip it underneath overhangs, into grass patches, and underneath docks too. And for your casting gear, you can also use it. Now, I tend to use that when I'm fishing around, especially heavy cover. It takes away a little bit of your castability, but with a little practice, with skipping with a bait caster reel, you can get pretty good at it and fish it just as efficiently as you would a spinning rod. Rigging a floating worm is really simple. First, I'll start off with about a 3/0 worm hook. Most of these floating worms come in a 6 to 7 inch model, and it happens to marry perfectly with a 3/0 hook. And just like you would a regular Texas rig, you're gonna thread it on the same way. Now, keep in mind, this is your head of the bait, and that bulb right there is the tail of the bait. So you're gonna take the head of the bait upside down, just like this, and you're gonna put the flat side of the worm towards the shank of the hook. So you'll rig it in, you'll stick the point in, and you'll push it down. And right when that starts to bend, that hook starts to bend, you're gonna make your first penetration on that worm. Okay, so that's where you are now. And then you're gonna slide this up the shank of the hook and turn it. And slide it over the eye of the hook. That's very important. It helps the worm sit straight, act right in the water, and it also protects that knot a little bit when you're around heavy cover. So you'll slide it up, just like that. And now, what you'll do, I like to size the worm against the hook. So you see where that bend happens right there? That's where you're gonna, at that point, you'll put your thumb to give you a visual reference. And then you'll put the hook point straight in at that point and go all the way through. And that's where you are now. And the next step is a quick text pose, which basically means you want to get this hook point penetrated in the worm so you don't get hung up a lot. So you'll pull a little bit towards the head of the bait and barely skin hook that point in the bait, in the worm. And that's what you're left with, a very streamlined, natural presentation. A weightless floating worm is an excellent way to catch bass throughout the entire country. Anytime during the spring, summer, even the fall months. It's easy to do, anybody can do it, and you don't need much expensive tackle for it.